Welcome to A Canadian Investing in the U.S., a podcast and YouTube channel focused on Canadians buying real estate with host Glenn Sutherland.
Welcome to another episode of A Canadian Investing in the U.S. This week, my guest is Shelley Hagen. Shelley, tell us a little bit about yourself.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Glenn. I am Shelley Hagen. I live in Calgary, Alberta at this particular point in time. I'm a real estate investor, and I have been since 2001. And I started what I like to call my little adventure in real estate investing with my business partner and very good friend, Carol McConaughey, in Regina, Saskatchewan in Canada. Mm-hmm. And we used to work for the phone company, both of us. And in 2000, they offered a severance package. And I had been planning to leave for a while and had looked at opportunities. And every time I went to look, then, I got a promotion and got, more responsibility and more money. And so then I just was an enticement not to leave. But finally, this time it was like, okay, that's it. It's time for me to go. I need to go do something else. And here we are.
Yeah. So I love your story because we had this. We sort of had this chat already, but yes. So where do we go from there? So you've left your job. What do you do next?
Okay, so let me just kind of talk about how I first got started. And so I'd worked for the phone company for about 20 years, and so had my business partner Carol. Carol and I had worked together, a number of different capacities over time, and we both decided to take off. And I remember very distinctly getting ready to go. And at first I hadn't told anyone that I was leaving. And then you start to tell a few people. And then I had to announce to my staff. I was in a middle management position. I had 10 managers and like 180 employees in 5 locations. And so I needed to tell my staff that I was going and my friends from the office. And when I started telling people that I was going to be leaving, people were shocked. I was single, no husband, no kids, so no other income really in my house at that time. Carol was similar. She lived, was divorced. She lived on her own as well. And we both had very good jobs, and people were surprised. And so people started asking me, well, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? What are you going to do? And at first it was like, well, I'm not sure. And I wasn't really telling them. And finally, Carol and I had decided we would look into real estate investing. It was an interest of mine for a long time, and she had owned a rental property before. So we thought, well, let's, take a look at this. And so then I started telling people that I was going to be a real estate investor. And they went, oh, what is a real estate investor? And then it was like all these questions about what it was all about. And quite frankly, at the time, didn't really quite know what it was either, because I had signed up for some training on real estate investing, but I hadn't taken the course yet. And I just really remember this one day. It was kind of a turning point for me when I was talking to the people at the office, and they said to me, how are you going to do it? And I remember looking at them and going, you know what? I have absolutely no idea how I'm going to do this, but I trust that I'm going to figure it out. And I've since learned that, I'll figure it out is the mantra for entrepreneurs, because you don't know from one day to the next what's coming in the door. I have a large network. So do you, Glenn, people all over North America. I know people all over the world. And you never know from one day to the next what exactly is coming in. And it may be something I want to work on, it may be something I don't. But maybe I know somebody who can help somebody with that. And so I just really realized that it was really a test of faith, that I had a really good career at the phone company. Loved my job over the years, had great opportunities, probably 100,000 plus in training and development through that company during my career at the company. And I have very, very good friends and very good memories of working there. But it was time to go on and do something different. And I just needed to take a leap of faith in myself And that really was what got me, through the whole thing, is that I never looked back. I just decided this is where I'm going, and that's where I was focusing. And it was like, what do I need to do today to help me get to the next step? And, when you start to do things like be a entrepreneur and you want to quit your job and you have a bunch of really good friends that you worked with or family members, everybody, isn't always as supportive of you and what you want to do as you're leaving. I'm sure you found that as well, right, Glenn?
Yeah.
and you have these people that are naysayers. And what I realize is that people are afraid for you, they're afraid that you're going to go off and do something stupid, like leave a good job that's, pays good money, and you're going to be broke and destitute before you know it. But really, a lot of cases, they're afraid for themselves because they never took that opportunity to go off. And some people would like to, but because of, family circumstances, they got kids and commitments with other family members, they don't feel that they have the ability to just quit and go do something different and leave the security of that paycheck. And sometimes they're just worried that you're going to do better than they are. And they might be a little jealous, even though they don't necessarily realize it or whatever. Mm-hmm. So I realized pretty quickly that I needed to only talk to the people that were going to be supportive of me. And there was a lot of people that were naysayers and people that weren't supporting. They're still really good friends of mine. And I have some very good friends that I've known since I was like 10 years old. We're still really good friends. Our families are, have known each other forever. We're just very supportive of each other. But they don't support my business. They never ask me about it. They don't want to know anything about it. As a result, I don't share with them what's happening in my life and my business. I share certain parts of it. So you need to do that as a self-protection in some ways, and surround yourself with people who are going in the same direction as you. They don't all have to be real estate investors, such as our case, Glenn.
Yeah.
But they have to be people that are forward focused, that are interested in improving their lot in life and their situation and where they want to go. And you need to surround yourself with those kind of people. And that's, I think, what really will make you be successful going forward. And you kind of have to leave some of those other people behind in different ways. Like I said, I have very good friends that, I'm still very good friends with, but they really are not part of my inner circle of people that I deal with in my business. And so you also need to be prepared to open your horizons a little bit, right? So when I first got into this business, my business partner and I decided to start buying rental properties so that we could replace our income in a short period of time. And we, kind of just took off with the business. And we had two mottos. And the first one was fake it till you make it. Because, when you first start a new business, there's a whole bunch of new verbiage that comes along and language that you're not familiar with. And you just make lots of notes, write everything down, keep track of it. And then you just tell the customer that's phoning you who has a problem. Usually people have a problem looking for a solution. And just say to them that, you're going to check, you and your partner are going to review it, and, you'll get back to them. Set a time when you get back to them and get back to them in the time that you say you're going to. And then you go off and you go, okay, crap, now what do I do? How do I figure out what this is all about? Because I have no idea. And then you learn as you go. And it's like, you got to jump into the deep end and just start pedaling like crazy. And you'll be surprised how much you're going to learn in a very short period of time. And our second motto was go big or go home. And so we had two really good incomes that had to be replaced in a short period of time. Neither one of us had backup, plans at home. It was just us on our own that had to do this. So we went out and we started buying property as soon as we could. And we truly bought properties with no money down. We had no money. I was leaving a good job. I had paid off a few bills before I left, but I still had mortgage and all those things on my property. I had a little bit of RSPs or, mutual funds and investments, but not a whole lot of money. And I certainly didn't want to take all that out and pay a bunch of tax on it.
No.
So we just jumped in and we each put in a couple $1,000s for startup costs.
Mm-hmm.
And then we went out and worked on getting lines of credit and credit cards. We had good credit. And
so, just not to stop you, but wouldn't it have been easier to do that when you still had your job to get more credit?
No, that is a really good question, Glenn. Here's the challenge. I didn't decide that I wanted to start doing real estate investing until like August.
Okay.
And we were done our jobs at the end of December. Okay. And we took our training the last week of November. And I was actually done December 3rd, I think it was. And so I had like a week to try to arrange credit. So I went and I started applying for some stuff, but I was leaving my very good job and I couldn't get employment letters or anything.
Right, yeah.
And so we took off and we had gotten a severance package from the phone company, and we decided to take a vacation because Carol and I had known each other for a long time, but we had never done business together. So we decided to go on vacation and see if we got along. So it started off with a whole group of us, friends of ours that were going to go, and we were going to go for 2 weeks. And then we thought, well, we're all unemployed. None of us had jobs. So let's try for a month. Well, then everyone just started dropping off. Pretty soon it was just Carol and I, and we decided to go to the South Pacific. And I'd been to Australia and New Zealand before, but I really wanted to go back, and I wanted to go to Bali. And so she said, yeah, let's go do it. So we took off and went on vacation, and we did spend a bunch of money. When we came home, we realized that, we got along well together. We decided, we're going to jump right in, both feet, leap of faith, where we go. And when we came back, I had rented my house out. So I had this box of mail, literally this big, huge box. And I went out to stay at Carol's place at Regina Beach for a couple of nights till my tenants exited my house. And so we're sitting there, we're going through our mailboxes, and there was all these credit card applications. And I said to her, well, we should start applying for some of these credit cards, because I had applied for a line of credit before I left, and I had successfully got a line of credit. Yeah. But we didn't have any rental property, so we hadn't gotten any mortgages or anything. And so while I was sitting there, she gets a phone call, and she starts talking away, and she's telling her no, she quit her job and all this kind of stuff. She hung up the phone and goes, well, that was easy. And I go, what do you mean? She goes, well, that was just an MBNA credit card, and they just gave me a $20,000 card. And I said, what? You just told them that you're unemployed. And she goes, I know, I can't believe it. So I said, I've got a bunch of those applications in here. So I ripped them all out. We filled out all these cards, and we started applying for credit. Yeah. And so our focus was get out and find as many deals that we could use, seller financing, do some creative things. And we also worked steadily on getting our access to a pool of funds. So within about 3 months, we had, between the two of us, we had access to about $260,000 between lines of credit, credit cards, unsecured, secured. And so we now had some buying power, because at that time, the properties were way cheaper. And we started buying houses cash off our credit cards and lines of credit, renovating them, refinancing them, pulling all the money out, paying off the line of credit. And we just did that over and over and over again. And then we had vendor take back and a few other different strategies that we used.
Were these credit cards like on a special rate, or were you paying the full interest rate?
Like the 19%.
Yes,
that's what we were getting.
Okay. I was just curious. Okay. All right.
Yes, but we would get in and buy the house and be able to renovate it and refinance it within anywhere between 4 to 6 weeks on average. Yep. So we were paying very little interest, really, because we didn't have the money for very long. And as soon as we got the refi money, that credit card was paid off right away, because we wanted to free up that money so we could use it for the next deal.
Yeah.
And so we did that over and over and over again. And within the rest of the year, we were able to buy 96 units between Saskatchewan, and Gatineau, Quebec. And we found a really...
Sorry, how long a period was that?
Well, it was actually from about March to December in 2001. Yeah. We were buying like 6 to 10 houses a month. It was just wild. We'd go into the to the lawyer's office, and we'd have a pile of paper like this tall on the desk, and we'd sign all these mortgages and all the paperwork, assignment of rents and whatever that comes with the loans. Yeah. And it would just move from one side to the other. And when we had originally met with our lawyer, and he was talking about, real estate investing and all this kind of stuff, and he goes, well, like, how many houses are you girls thinking of buying? And he had just mentioned some investor who was a hard money lender that had 30 to 40 houses. And we went, well, 30 to 40 houses is a good place to start. And we all kind of laughed. And I'm sure he thought we weren't serious. And then a couple of months later, he comes in, he goes, yeah, you girls were quite serious that you wanted to buy, 40 houses. And I go, yeah, this, by that point in time, we had 48 in Regina. 48 units. And I said, and we're also buying in Gatineau, Quebec. And he goes, what? And so when we talked to him at the end of the year, he was shocked to find out we had bought 96 units. Because I think he thought we'd each buy a house with a basement suite and, kind of get things going. It was like, no, go big or go home was the motto. And so I think the most we had at any given time was 115 units in Gatineau. And we've subsequently sold off a lot of those properties and bought some commercial properties and did a bunch of different things. So
and
we
did you manage all these yourself? Like you were doing the property management too?
In Regina, we were.
Okay.
We were doing that ourselves. It was difficult. We had bought low-income housing because it was cheap and quick and easy, and there were little cash cows. Yep. But there were a lot of work. And in Gatineau, we had bought higher end. Most of our tenants were middle income to high income tenants, nicer, higher end properties, newer. And the challenge we had in Quebec was the taxes. We had, the very first year, we got a bill for $150,000 from Revenue Quebec. Whoa. And we only had property there for like 3 or 4 months. And I phoned the lady at Revenue Quebec, and I said to her, I'm not quite sure why I'm charged $150,000. Like, I haven't even made $150,000 in income. Like, that particular point in time, I'd made like a couple $1,000. Yeah. And I could never figure that out. It took me 4 years to get that bill down to $20,000, which to my knowledge I shouldn't have had a bill at all. My accountant couldn't seem to get it straightened out. It was the weirdest thing.
That's terrifying.
And it was terrifying, actually. Yeah. And we had challenges with that through the whole time we owned the properties there. And we did eventually sell them because the taxes were higher than a lot of other places.
Oh, yeah.
Excuse me. So yeah, we decided to move on. Right from the beginning, when we got into this business, we knew we wanted to invest in the United States too, which is how Glenn and I met, is because a friend of mine had met him through another networking event and had referred us to, meet each other. We had decided we wanted to do that right from the very beginning. I mean, we live in Canada, 36 million people, United States, 360 million. It's a whole lot more houses down there than there are here in Canada. So it made sense to try to go down there. So we actually went down in the fall of 2002 and started looking around in Dallas, Fort Worth. And we spent, the winter kind of there looking at deals and working on deals. And then, then we went to Phoenix. And my business partner, Carol, had always wanted to live in the United States. And so we had established a relationship with some really good friends, and they helped her get a visa. And she currently lives in the United States at this particular point in time, full time. So we've been investing now in Phoenix all along. I have invested in Detroit. When the crash came in 2008, 2009, I invested in Detroit, Las Vegas. We did a little bit of work in New Orleans after Katrina. Mm-hmm. Carol and I had been to Florida a couple of times and looked into Florida and decided against it because at that particular point in time, we decided we wanted to make life a little easier for ourselves. And to fly to Florida was like an all-day jaunt from Western Canada. Yep. And it was way easier to fly to Phoenix or even Las Vegas or someplace. Yep. So that's why we kind of centralized most of our investing now in Western Canada and the Western United States. So over time, we sold off everything in Quebec, and I've sold off the properties in Detroit. And, we just really focus now predominantly at this particular point in time in Phoenix. I do have a partner who is actually on his way to Texas, and we're looking to do some stuff in Texas. We've done, stuff in Texas in the past. We're looking to maybe do a little bit of work down there as well. Yep. So, it just depends on where life takes us from here is what we're going to do next. But I am trying to make life a little easier on myself and not be kind of crazy running all over the place. But
yeah, and so I remember from our previous conversation, you were talking about downsizing maybe some of the properties as you went through this because maybe you didn't need so many. Maybe talk about why would you do such a thing?
Well, mostly when we sold off the inventory in Quebec, I got into commercial property because I wanted to get rid of some of the smaller properties and go bigger. Yep. And so that's why we decided to do that. And I'm looking at some land development. And one of the things that Carol and I both have had an interest in for a long time, we're still business partners. I do stuff on my own. She does stuff on her own, and we do stuff together. And we both looked at wanting to build or buy a mobile home park. Her, father and sister, her father had built a mobile home park back in the early 70s, and her sister now owns it and runs it. And it's been kind of one of those things that's been the back of our mind for a long time. So we're looking to do some different, bigger projects now going forward, not necessarily so many small properties. It's just part of evolution and get into private lending, etc. going forward.
Yeah, so you said you were down there in 2002 or 2003, and you're still there, so you would have had to go through that whole fun crash down there.
My gosh, we went through the whole peaks and valleys, and all kinds of stuff went on.
How did that affect the whole portfolio?
Well, when we went down there initially, we had our portfolio still in Canada. So we had income, which allowed us to go down and spend, 5 to 6 months in the States working on our business down there. And when the crash came, certainly there was, this unreal opportunity to come in and buy property at a very deep discount. But prior to that, we had been working on opportunities down there and different deals. And we had seen the property slowly start to go up. We're mostly in the Phoenix market. And one year, the properties just went crazy. They went up $100,000 in 3 months. And we had seen the exact same thing happen here in Calgary in 2007, the year before the crash. In 2007, there had been a change in the leadership in the premier of the province. And the new premier had come in and wanted to change the royalty reviews. And in Alberta, because we're a strong oil and gas province, the royalties are what the oil companies and gas companies pay the government as a tax. Yep. So they wanted to, possibly look at increasing those taxes. Well, the oil companies' rebuttal was, no, we don't want to do this. And instead of staying in Alberta, we're going to move to Saskatchewan and British Columbia, which they did. And that just happened to be around the time that there was a change in government in Saskatchewan. And basically the doors were thrown open and said, Saskatchewan's open for business, come on over. And they did, they left. And our market here in early 2007 collapsed, or, went down a lot. And not to the same extent of what happened in 2008, 2009 in the United States. But property values in 2006 had gone up $100,000 in 3 months. And that was, as soon as you start to see that kind of thing, you really need to step back and take a good look what's happening, because that is not the norm.
No.
And the market cannot sustain that. And it's a huge red flag. So you should stop buying and start hoarding your money to start buying when the downturn comes. And that's what happened in 2007. So the first and second quarter 2006, crazy. And at the time, all of the newspapers and news outlets were saying, Alberta was the place to invest in the world. And we had a ton of investors that come in to this market and just flooded the market with spec properties. And they were buying all these, rental properties with the intent that, everything was going to go up because it was just crazy. And we had been seeing a 10 to 20% appreciation for several years during the, early 2000s. And so people thought this was just going to never stop. It was going to go forever. Well, nothing goes forever. There's a cycle in real estate about every 7 to 10 years. And you really need to be conscious of that. And people during that time in 2007 who didn't know about the real estate cycle and weren't paying attention to the red flags got caught big time. And so overnight, our market just got flooded with inventory. And then all the tenants panicked because all the rental properties were for sale. So the tenants all moved out. So we had 40-50% of the MLS listings were vacant. And nobody's getting any income. They were all rental properties. And the tenants were moving. The landlords who had properties were desperate now because they were worried that they were going to have trouble filling them. So they reduced the rents. The rents went through the floor and all kinds of things happened. So we had seen that already happen in 2007. And then right behind it came the global financial crisis in 2008. But the same thing was happening in the United States in around that 2006 timeframe in Phoenix. Properties went up like crazy. We were all worried about the bubble. All these people from California were refinancing their houses because they'd gone up so much in value, taking all their equity and coming to Phoenix and buying crazy houses. And at the time, the vacancy rate was 15%. So all these investors who were newbie investors bought all this property and couldn't rent them out. And then they couldn't afford them. They couldn't afford to pay the taxes. So they're losing their houses to back taxes or foreclosure. It was just kind of crazy. So that was an opportunity that you couldn't miss. It didn't come along every day. And you knew that it wasn't going to last forever. And the bottom came around the end of November of 2009. And we were actively buying during that time. And the property values had gone down, less than 50%. The property values went down in Canada too, but they went back up. And we had a very strong team between the Prime Minister, the Finance Minister, and the Chairman, no, that's not the right word, of the Bank of Canada. And they really kept Canada afloat, and we were seen as a good, strong place to invest. I'm not sure that we ride it out as well now because a lot has changed between now and then. So you really need to be conscious of what's going on and watching and preparing yourself. When you see those kind of spikes go, then stop buying, start hoarding your money, wait for the downturn, because as it goes up, it's got to come down, and get in and start buying when the property values go down so that you can take advantage of that upturn again at some point in time. So that's what we did in Phoenix. And now, of course, the property values are back up to where they were before, and possibly in a lot of cases even higher than they were. And so we got in, bought, held them for a number of years, and we've sold off a lot of those properties because we're waiting for the next curve.
So for some of these properties, like you had properties coming into the crash, were you holding these in cash, or did you have financing on these properties?
We had financing on pretty much everything, yeah.
But you had long enough financing that you didn't have many refis coming during that period?
No, we were okay in Canada during that time.
And even in the States, like when you're going through 2008,
then
you're financing.
in the U.S. you couldn't get financing.
Exactly. So that's what I was wondering. Like, if you
Yeah.
had financing on these properties, how did you did it? You had long enough term that it didn't expire while there was no financing available.
Well, in the U.S. we got no financing,
Oh,
and
in the
still
U.S.
to
you're doing
this
cash.
we're
Okay.
doing cash. Yeah.
Okay.
So we brought in joint venture partners, used our own cash where we could. Joint venture partners. I mean, there's private money that probably has been the real catalyst with the whole global financial crisis. Is that the banks, of course, especially in the United States, got the huge handouts from the government to help keep them afloat, and they didn't necessarily manage it the way that the government wanted them to do it, right?
No.
And so, as a result, then they, turned and changed a lot of their lending criteria. And it's very difficult at that time, even for people who were American citizens, to get financing on revenue properties. It was just like such a big taboo. So what happened was the private lenders kind of took a look and went, well, here's an opportunity. So they stepped in and they took over a huge percentage of the market share. And as a result, they haven't gone away. They've gotten much better, bigger. And, there's some that we worked with in Phoenix that now are probably making $300 or $400 million a year. Wow. Being private lenders. They go in, they buy stuff at the foreclosure auction, they wholesale it to, you to go in and flip it. They give you all the money to do the fix and flip. And at the end, you pay them their, 12, 14 or whatever % to do the deal.
Plus some points in the front, and
points in the front, exactly. Yeah,
they're making lots of money. They're not going poor anywhere.
No, for sure. And so, as a result, they're pretty entrenched now in that economy. And the banks, I think the banks have looked and went, wow, we left that door open for those people to come in, and they filled that gap. And they're not going away. They're going to try to continue to do that. So, really when you look at banking and what's happening now with cryptocurrency and things that are going on, the banking has changed, and it's going to change dramatically, I think, going forward as well. It's not going to be the same for sure. And you can get financing now in the United States. If I have a portfolio of properties, they'll come in and do a portfolio loan, kind of a blanket mortgage for me, but it has to be probably over $500,000. And they'll consider doing that at this particular point in time. But it's still very difficult to do, the one house at a time kind of financing.
Yeah, it's like reverse financing. It's like if it's more expensive, it's easier to get a loan. If it's cheap, it's hard to get a loan.
Exactly.
It's so like, what?
Yes, I know.
Wait, what? Yeah.
Or the more units, right? If you got a fourplex and up, you can get something. But a single family home is very tough.
They're picky about what they want, and they want to make sure they're going to make money on it. And they don't make enough money on a single house a lot of times.
Yes. Yeah. And that's where they run into the problems, with the foreclosures. They ended up owning a lot of inventory, and some of those banks are still sitting on inventory still, right? Because they couldn't sell them all at one time. Oh. And for whatever reason, they're waiting for them to go up in certain locations so that they can make a little bit more money.
You'd think that they'd be selling them now. Like, I don't know if there's any markets that are below the pre-recession time. I think everything's sort of recovered. So,
yes, I think in most cases. I think some of the high-end properties.
Yeah, maybe so.
I'm hearing, there's still someone I know had gotten not that long ago a package of $1,000,000+ houses in some place in California, and they've been sitting vacant for years.
Wow.
So, and the bank just parked them and sitting on them, hoping for the appreciation to go back up. So, So you never know. So that's a little bit about kind of where I'm at, and I still do, rent to own, and I do a few things. I'm looking for some land development projects. I do training on how to invest in real estate, And I wholesale a lot. I wholesale real estate, but I also wholesale commodities, and I help people with project funding. I used to be a mortgage broker for a while.
Yep.
So I help people with project funding. So lo and behold, I happen to have a lot of people right now looking for financing for hemp grow operations. Shocking
Yeah.
with what's going on in the market. But
Yeah.
so I try to help people wherever I can to connect people, right? So I'm a facilitator. I facilitate introductions and connect people together to help them. And it's all about, the more people the more deals you're going to do and the more money you're going to make. And you start to, we always talk about networking when I'm talking to my students and I'm training. But it's really, have a big network. But how do you monetize that network? How do you make some money off of those relationships? Not taking advantage of people, but how do I work with you and help you be successful in something you need? And are you willing to pay me for that introduction to facilitate that process for you? So, I wholesale a lot of different types of things. And that's kind of what my business is about. And I do a lot of international business. Right now, I probably do more business in the United States than I do in Canada. Well, I know I definitely do more in the United States than Canada. And I do a lot of business internationally as well. I have clients in London and Philippines and different places like that as well. So you just never know. Getting back to being an entrepreneur, I always say when the phone's ringing, that's business calling. And you never know what that business is till you pick up the phone and see what it is. And the more people you get to know, the more people are going to phone you and go, hey, Shelley, do you happen to know somebody who can get me some sugar? Well, I do. I don't do that business, but I have a friend. Yeah. And I can connect you because I know people and those people know other people. And so that's all it's really is about leveraging the relationships you have, the money you have, the credit you have, and all the other people that and how having them help you build your business and you help them along the way too. Does that make sense?
That makes a lot of sense. And I think that perfectly segues right into our finish it. So if someone wanted to get a hold of you to talk to you, what would be the best way to do so?
Probably by texting or emailing me.
Okay.
I do use Facebook, but it's not my form of business communication.
Yeah.
So I can be reached. I don't know. Do you want me to post that someplace?
Sure. Yeah, whatever. You can send me an email afterwards, and I'll put it in the show notes. So if someone wants to get a hold of you, they can do so.
Okay, that'd be great. I'd love to talk to them. You never know what opportunities we can do together, and same with you, Glenn. Hopefully there's something
we'll be chatting.
do.
We'll be chatting. All right. Thank you so much for your time. I could sit here and do this story for hours and probe into this. This is it's so exciting that you. Just looking at my notes, you leave your job, you need to replace your income, so you go on vacation, which seems crazy.
Yeah.
And then,
Exactly.
And then you get a whole bunch of credit cards in order to be able to fund this stuff.
Yeah.
And then you go super big, go big or go home. And it's just you put it all on the table, and I love it. I love it. Like when I went down to the States to buy my first couple, I didn't have my corporate structure set up. I didn't have any. I just you know what? I'm doing it this week. I'm going to buy properties. That's it.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'll figure it out afterwards how to get this fixed.
Yeah. Well, and that's just as an ending note here. When we got back from our vacation, right? We're sitting at Carol's place going through our boxes of mail, and we had started working on our business plan when we were sitting in the rain one day under a palapa in Bali. Uh-huh. And so we're working on our business plan and our goals and what we want to do and all this kind of stuff. And we just decided, we just set up our corporation. So the next morning we picked up the phone and we phoned this group that we had done some training through. Mm-hmm. And so I phoned the guy and we're talking to him and we're saying how we want to set up this corporation. He goes, yeah, well, you need to take some training first. And I went, but yeah, we already done that. And he goes, it is going on. And we go, no, we want to set the course of the company up today. And he goes, oh, like you're ready to go? We went, yeah, like we just got back from vacation, like let's go.
Yeah.
And literally the next day we went out and looked at a package of 10 houses. So not only do we just want to go look at one, let's go look at a package of 10, right?
Yeah.
And that's what happened. The very first house we bought one. And then after that, we started looking at packages of houses, and we realized just as easy to buy 10 as it is to buy one. If you got a motivated seller who's willing to do a vendor take back, go for it. Don't just hold yourself back. Just jump in and both feet in over your head, and you'll sink or swim. And we both knew how to swim. So off we went, kind of thing.
Love it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming on the show. This is a great conversation. This is one of my favorite ones. Thanks so much.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me, Glenn. I'm really glad we got a chance to do this together.